Hello everyone, this is the Heliofire Futon Mini, a Stretch X with 1306 3100 kV motors, Cyclone 3056 props, generic 600 TV line CCD camera, F4 flight controller with an OSD, power switchable VTX up to 200 milliwatt, also has pit mode, 25 amp 4-in-1 32-bit ESC, a right-hand circular polarized micro antenna, LEDs, and a buzzer. Came with an XT30. I put in an FrSky XM Plus. It comes with extra zip ties and heat shrinks, stickers, and an extra set of props, and a really long battery strap. The Futon Mini weighs 138 grams. I'm getting almost 145 millimeters motor post or motor post. Arms are 4 millimeters thick. Top plate is 1.5 millimeters thick. The two sandwich plates are also 1.5 millimeters thick. Interior flight stack distance looks to be 25 millimeters. We're going to try to save some time here, and I'm going to talk through the video just a little bit. Do note that I am flying on a G&B 550, and that's going to be important because this flight is almost 5 minutes long. If you count all the seconds up to me going up and landing, it is, I think, 2 seconds short of 5 minutes, and that's on a 554S. And that's probably the most outstanding feature that this little quad has going for it, is that it's very efficient, and the use of props and the low kV motors and the kind of the smaller spec motors, you know, so you can get a lot of training time or stick time. And this flight video that I'm showing you, it's not a flight video to wow you, but I think this video or this flight does a pretty good job of showing deficiencies as well as things it does well. And it also, I don't crash, because oftentimes I crash, and then because I do full flight review videos, then that means that flight has to go away. So my pool to pick from is not the total number of flights, but yet the total number of complete flights. You'll see here a little later on, when I go for a little bit of that diagonal sort of power loop between the shed and the open end of the yard, that I have to bail out, and that shows the lack, and some of these other bursts over the house show the lack of upward thrust that I was looking for. You can still do these things, you just have to stay on the throttle longer in order to get the height and throw that you need. And that's due to the low torque of the 1306 motors and also the low kV, which gives you longer flight times, but it produces less torque on the low end and less top end prop speed. A few things I want to cover that if you want to, you can go back and look at the frame itself. I think they do one thing very nicely in the fact that they have these little horns sticking off the edge. They almost look like crow's feet or something. And they should serve to protect the motors fairly well. It's a little bit of a copy of what we saw on the Floss. I think the design is slightly different. And it's nice that they chose to use some name brand props. The Heliofire X140 Pro came with some racecraft looking props, but they really didn't perform very well, and once you put gem fans on, that thing just jumped to life. So it's nice to see that that brand has gone ahead and using some name brand parts. I think that one last thing that's really interesting about this unit is this mini circular polarized antenna. Take a look at the video, and what do you think? Is this better than normal for me, or is this worse? And do we need to be finding out where this antenna came from for our micros so that we can get more of these? It does have a UFL on it, so it should be able to plug into many of our micro stacks that we've been using, and it is quite small. The green area that you may have seen when we did the quick specs, that area isn't like a rubber band. I'm not comfortable pulling it off. I think I could end up damaging it. I don't want to do that just yet because it's the only one I have, and when I did some Google around before I started recording this video, I did not find this anywhere. So if you know where to get one of these, whether it's, you know, eBay or Alibaba or something like that, please let us know and share that down below, and I can pin or that comment, or I can add that to the description for other people that might want to get one of these circular polarized micro antennas. The biggest deficiency that this has is that the camera has essentially no camera protection. It's sitting out front, it's on a couple of 3D printed pieces, and if you get anything between the front two arms, it's going to probably hit the camera in some manner. So if you have a violent crash and a branch or a race gate or a pole or anything of that nature gets between the arms and the props, then you're going to smash up a camera. And so that's something that you have to be very aware of. In this particular case, also because of the camera position, which you can raise, you can push the 3D printed pieces up higher on the standoff so that you have a little bit of an elevated camera position. Of course, it's going to increase your risk of smashing the camera. We get a lot of prop in view, but not a terrible amount. I am flying at about 45 degrees on this one. I couldn't quite go up to by typical 50-degree flying because it just, I couldn't handle it that way. It just didn't have the low-end torque that I needed. in order to be able to fly at that speed around the house, or the yard, excuse me. So you'll kind of notice in some of these moves, it's a little bit sweeping. And I'm also, from time to time, I take a look at the OSD because I'm like, when is this going to end? So I do get sloppy from time to time, but that's real world flying right there, isn't it? You know, when you fly a bunch of different stuff, you sometimes wonder about what's going on. And I have been on a number of flights with this. I don't think I've been on as much as I have a few others. I had some issues to where I wasn't able to fly as often as I wanted to. So I would say I have about 25 to 30 flights rather than any more on that. And as we roll in with the low battery, let's jump back to the desk. I have a few things left to show you. So these are the 3D printed pieces that I was talking about, and you could raise these up and you would get less prop in view with a milder camera angle. You can see my camera angle kind of there. So this would be about flat. I didn't measure it via Betaflight, so you kind of have to judge that for yourself. I do think that's somewhere around 40 to 45 degrees. And you can see definitely that the camera is really out in front. Anything that gets in here is going to smash it up. And anything that, if you elevate the camera, and this is what I mean by when you elevate the camera, you increase the risk, because you still have this risk, but you also have the risk that you'll come in, something will come in over the top and catch it. So you can see the motors, the motors actually provide a little bit of protection for the camera. You can also increase your chances of maybe not filtering something from like a motor into the camera by reversing your props and reversing your motor direction. Make sure in Betaflight that you also check that little slider to make sure Betaflight knows that you've done that. This is the antenna I had spent some time talking about, and you know they've got essentially the same components in many parts of this, especially the most important components, which is the flight stack, as the Helifar Micro or the Helifar X140 Pro. And I think if you're looking for something with a really long flight time, this is one that you can look forward to. Because you do get long flights, and you can still do all the acrobatic stuff that you want to train yourself on. It's just you have to get up higher, and to get the throw, you have to stay on the throttle longer, and then your zero throttle float will be less than it will on more higher performance motors. And so if you're not looking for kind of a trainer sort of quad, I would more push you towards this direction, which is the Helifar X140 Pro. This thing is a screaming demon, and you can see it has very few, or very similar a layout of components. It has, look, you even have the same antenna hole for both of these. We have the same flight stack. It's very likely that's the same generic camera. Very likely it's the same LED and buzzer. It's just inverted, it looks like. But the big difference is the motors, and you have a taller flight stack. So you have an elevated camera position, so you have an opportunity for a little less prop in view if that's something that you're sensitive to. It's also unlikely that you will be searing this antenna off because of its placement and the fact that it uses a connection. Now this one does come in at 30 grams heavier. So that's part of where the flight time goes, is to the weight to carry this one. But this one performs like a screaming Mimi. Stu over at UAV Futures, once you put Gemfan props on it, these 3052s, I think they're 3052s. Yeah, 3052s. I think they clocked it at 110 miles an hour. That rivals a lot of 5-inchers. So if you're looking for a cruiser, or you're looking for something with long flight times to give you plenty of stick time, maybe you're getting in early in your FPV journey and you just want to fly long periods of time, that's not something I'm good at, because I tend to, kind of like you saw in the flight video, I tend to start to wonder, when is it going to be, not that I'm not enjoying it, that I'm looking forward to the end. It's that I'm so used to flying between 2 and as a maximum of 3 minutes. When I get over 3 minutes, I can kind of feel it. I can kind of feel that anxiety start to kick in of, I don't know what can I do? Where's my power at? Can I still do a big jump over the house? Do I need to start to ride the throttle a little bit more in those hard turns? What do I need to do? So that's where some of my trepidation comes from. This one, the flight time is going to be quite a bit less, but I'll put a card up here and a link down in the description to this review. I do think this is a good quality machine. They both have similar layouts as far as the arms. The Futon Mini uses a double sandwich plate, which you might prefer, because the X140 Pro does not. I've buried this thing into the ground from some of those super high punch outs, and I haven't had any issues with breaking any of the components just as of yet. This did come with a tune, So presumably somebody did fly it. I felt the tune was a little bit loose, so I tweaked it out a little bit, and you see those numbers there on screen. The strap, as I mentioned in the quick specs, is probably a bit excessive, but that's easy to switch out because it's just kind of threaded between these two sandwich plates. When I would put a 550 battery on it, I would end up with, after it would loop around, I'd end up with the strap, I'd say about like that. Whenever you get strapped flapping around, I sure don't want anything flapping around hitting my flight stack, creating any vibrations. It's not necessary. So, and then that also only leaves you a certain part of the Velcro where it actually attaches. So a shorter battery strap might be in order if you're looking at this particular model, because it only comes with one battery strap. At least the box that I had only had one battery strap. Something that we tend to do, we need to do again, is take a look at the carbon fiber layout. You can see that it's all chamfered, at least the bottom section of it is. It doesn't look like the sandwich plates are chamfered, but the arms are chamfered on both the top and bottom, so they're nice and smooth. Whether you like that or not, that's up for you to decide. It does look like that I either lost a screw in flight, or it didn't have the screw. I don't recall that screw missing. I'm just now noticing that. Item to note there. As far as putting a receiver in, there is a good amount of room in there. You're not going to be able to get a big chunky receiver in there, but with an XM Plus and XM, most of those micro receivers that we're using anymore should fit in there just fine. We've got soft mounting. You might be able to see it, the grommet here, and then we've got a little O-ring up there, and then I can squish this down a little bit. Hopefully you can see that. It doesn't move a lot. Actually, in the Helifire, it moves more. I think we're too tight. Let's see. Well, there's not a whole lot of screws sticking out, but that might be, we might be able to loosen that up just a touch, because I don't see where this is going to be providing us. It's a little bit much vibration dampening. It just seems like it's a little bit too squished. The VTX is power switchable. If you find that you can't get it up to the milliwatt that you want to run, you have to press and hold this button over here on the side for, I think it's 20 seconds in order to get it to unlock those higher milliwatts. And I think that's something they're doing on VTXs in order to get around some of the regulation about the frequency above 25 milliwatts. A lot of countries don't allow us to run above 25 milliwatts. So I think that's something manufacturers are doing to stay off the radar for getting any sort of violation or something, a strike against them in some way. But the flight stack is a pretty good quality flight stack, and with those 32-bit ESCs, you could put on fun tones like we did on the Helifire X140. You know, we put on, I think I put on Kansas's Carry On My Wayward Son. So that was a little funneling, and that's something you can do with this. But this is a cruiser. It's not going to give you huge, big jumps when you hit 100% throttle. If you're looking for that, I would recommend, again, the X140. So really, with the Photon brand and this sort of stretched X, even though they say on the website that this is a true X, it is not. It is a stretched X. You have really your options. You know, we've got some 1408 motors, I think. Yeah, 1408 motors or 1306 motors. Powerhouse with all sorts of punch. Cruiser with really long flight times. So you can pick. Okay, if you have any comments, questions, suggestions about these vehicles, please leave those in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.